Hello everyone, Luke Smith here, and we're going to do another file reading today of Resident Evil 5 library files. This one is Chris Redfield, and it's a bit of a long one, so let's get into it. Listed within this file is a general background information overview of the BSAA agent Chris Redfield, as pieced together from various sources. The information listed here is neither complete nor should it be used as a physiological analysis of the subject. Chris Redfield began his military career in the United States Air Force, possessing a service record repeat with both commendations and disciplinary actions. Commanding officers has described Chris as uncompromising, possessing unwavering dedication, and having a high level of adaptability. It was these traits that saw Chris earn his rings, but also these same traits that brought him into direct conflict with his superiors. Unable to settle those differences, Chris retired from the United States Air Force. It's a shame they don't put like years, when it happened, sort of thing, in these things, to make it a bit more easier. After retirement, Chris was scouted by Raccoon City Special Forces (STARS) because of his superior firearm and hand-to-hand combat skills, along with his qualifications as both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopter pilot. Joining the STARS team, Chris was designated as Point Man (PM) for Alpha Team. As PM, it was his duty to scout and secure positions ahead of the team. His duties required him to not only be a good shooter and fighter, but also be able to use a wide array of weaponry. It was in this area where he excelled, showing the ability to handle anything from small arms to large weapons, and the flexibility to use them in the situations dictated. Chris' performance with STARS was exemplary. It appeared that he has finally found his niche, but fate had other plans in mind for Chris. Unbeknownst to him, the next chapter in his story was about to unfold on that fateful night on July 1998. The STARS Bravo team responded to reports of a disappearance in the surrounding areas of Raccoon City. Abruptly went radio silent. Alpha Team were sent in to investigate. Shortly after their helicopter touchdown, they were attacked by wild, ravenous creatures, canines known as BOW Cerberus, and were forced to take refuge in a nearby mansion. The mansion was in reality the Arclay research facility for the pharmaceutical giant Umbrella. It was at this facility that they developed bioweapons and conducted uncounted illegal experiments. Here, Chris and his partner, Jill Valentine, were forced to combat numerous BOWs as part of an active tactical research plan devised by Albert Wesker, which obviously they didn't know about this until after Resident Evil 1. Wesker was the commanding officer of STARS, and therefore Chris and Gill's superior. Though all of his actions were done at the behest of the Umbrella Corporation. Wesker used his rank in STARS to manipulate Chris and Jill. Wesker unleashed several BOWs into the mansion in order to gather data for his own ends. This tragedy in the Arclay Mountains became known as the Mansion Incident, and ended with Chris and Jill destroying the creature known as Tyrant, the death of Wesker, and the destruction of the laboratory. Having survived the incident in the mansion, Chris attempted to notify the authorities regarding Umbrella's activities, but all of his warnings were ignored due to Umbrella's powerful sway. Having exhausted his options, this option, he attempted to notify the US government of the situation. This too, however, proved fruitless. He knew that taking on a large corporate entity alone would not be easy, and might in fact prove fatal. But in the end, he was left with no other choice. Thus, Chris continued his investigation on his own, without informing his family of his intentions. He soon departed for Europe. Chris wanted to shield his family away from any ill effects his investigation may incur. But ironically, he brought one of his family members into the fray. When Claire Redfield was unable to get in contact with her brother, obviously that's Chris's sister, she journeyed to Raccoon City to find him. Upon arrival in the city, she found the area awash in the terror brought by the spread of the tyrant virus. In that land of death and confusion, Claire met Leon S. Kennedy. Together, they were able to fight their way out of the city and after the Raccoon City ordeal. Claire flew to Paris to investigate Umbrella's activities in Europe, but she was captured and sent to Rockfort Island. When Chris learned from Leon what happened to Claire, he made his way to Rockfort Island to free her. This was in, I believe, December of 1998. It was there that Chris was confronted with many harsh facts. Umbrella had a research facility in Antarctica. Alexia Ashford was still alive. There was a new virus called the T. Veronica virus, and most surprisingly of all, Albert Wesker was still alive. The man behind the horror of the mansion incident, Chris's former commanding officer, somehow survived the destruction of the mansion. Once again, Chris was unwittingly thrust into one of Vesker's schemes, and were forced to face the man whose destiny appeared to be intertwined with his own. Chris was easily overpowered by Vesker's inhuman strength, but luck was on Chris's side that day. That's the thing, because Wesker injected himself right before the when he met Chris at the end of the Resident Evil 1, and he let the tyrant attack him, so because he knew he would come back due to the virus in him, and that's how he was still alive. in the ensuing conflation that consumed the island, Chris and Vesker's conflict was put on hold for the time being. With his resolved strength, Chris determined that no matter at what personal cost to himself, Umbrella would fall. Fast forward to 2003, the Russian one in Umbrella Chronicles. Chris is in the skies over Russia with his partner Jill Valentine by his side. At this point, Umbrella was in dire straits. In the wake of the destruction of Raccoon City, the company became embattled in ignition, and their stock prices plummeted. It was only a matter of time before Umbrella collapsed. It was during this time that Chris learned of Umbrella's plans to develop a new type of BOW. Chris and Jill had obtained the information, and they headed to the something laboratory where the Talos plan was being conducted in secret. That's the thing, I've never heard of the actual name. That's the first time I've heard of the name of that facility in Russia. I don't think it was mentioned in the in Umbrella Chronicles. They were to rendezvous with an anti-bioterrorism unit and attack the location. Not long after this incident, the once seemingly untouchable Umbrella was officially no more. The seed that Umbrella sowed however, would continue to reap the tragedy for the world. BOWs were no longer restricted to areas of combat, but were now being used in terrorist attacks against innocent civilians. It was at this time that Chris and Gil joined the BSAA, a group dedicated to eliminating those bioweapons. The two of them traversed the world together, partners in the fight to bring bioterrorists to justice. The shadow of Umbrella still loomed large, though they would soon, as they would soon discover. When Chris and Gil went to question Umbrella's founder, Oswald E. Spencer, about Resca's whereabouts, they were greeted by the sight of Umbrella's founder lying crumpled on the floor, and the blood-stained figure of Resca standing over him. This would be the third confrontation between Chris and Resca. This time the confrontation ended in tragedy, as Gil, seeing no other option, made the ultimate sacrifice to stop Resca. With one last effort, she charged Resca and threw both herself and him over the side of a cliff. The BSAA searched for Gil's body for 3 months, but no trace of her was ever found. After 3 months of searching with no success, Gil Valentine was officially declared dead by the BSAA. No one knows what promises Chris made in front of Gil's empty grave, but following her loss, he redoubled his efforts to eradicate all bioorganic weapons wherever they may be. Initially stationed at the BSAA's North American branch, his investigations took him around the world. He became involved in so many operations that he had more missions to his name than any other BSAA member. During one of his investigations, Chris learned of an upcoming bioweapons deal in Africa with a connection with a man named Ricardo Irving. Irving's name has come up quite often of late in association with bioweapon smuggling. After informing the BSAA African branch about Irving, Chris urgently requested permission to participate in the operation to arrest Irving. As for the reason he wished to participate in this mission, Chris would not comment. Whenever he is withholding information or not, it is unclear. As one of the most respected BSAA agents, his presence in this operation greatly increases the chance of success. Thus, his request has been granted, and that was basically how Resident Evil 5 begins. They give him a new partner, Sheva Alama, which her name is on this list. They got to do her next, and it's basically how Resident Evil 5 starts. So yeah, that was it for this video. Next Tuesday will be the next one. Tomorrow will be a Saba Mask video. Possibly a TikTok tonight. I haven't really decided yet, but I'll have a look, see if I can find some information to talk about. But yeah, that's been it for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.